I'll talk when Hi everybody, welcome to level 2 of Planetary Magic. This first call is really going to be more, I'm going to talk some about Pluto transits, but I'm going to talk more about how we're going to do this. Because this is not going to work the way I did level 1, where I just teach you and you've got handouts. I want you to really learn how to work it out for yourself, kind of the dates of transits and where things are. Hi, Barbara. And so this is going to be a lot more interactive, not necessarily on the calls, but what I'm anticipating doing is a mix of calls and a mix of some videos for you that you get to keep or download, and you doing a lot of the work. Because I learned transits by looking at my own past transits. This is kind of how it really kind of goes more into your soul if you look back at your own transits. So I did do a poll in the group, and it was a bit late. Apologize for that. You know me, I always overgive for these things. So if we need to add on a week at the end or 2 weeks at the end, then we will be doing to cover everything. Because this is more of a let's get organized and get together kind of exercise. Now, to really start to, I'm just looking at the poll to see if anybody, see who's filled it out. I know a couple of you have. I know Jenna, you have, and just 2 of you have. So I would like you all to go and fill out the polls, whether you own an ephemeris, yes or no. And tell me what astrology software you use to create charts. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want you to be able to look at the timing of transits for yourself. And when my teacher did it, she used a certain software that I don't know anybody else uses nowadays. I think Stephen Forrest might still use it because she was his apprentice. And we were using different software, and I had to figure a lot of this out for myself, which is okay, but I'd like to help you through it. So if you don't have astrology software, you can use astro.com, but astro.com doesn't do printouts of dates of exact transits and when they enter and exit orb-wise. Not that I know of. I can't actually find any way of doing that on astro.com. Now, I'm not saying you have to go out and buy expensive software, because it is expensive. And even though these are not the cheapest, the best, probably the easiest way to do it is to buy yourself ephemeris. These are the ones I have. Really, every astrologer should have an ephemeris. And if you own an ephemeris, you, let me get the chat up. Oh yeah, in the Facebook group for the Planetary Magic, Barbara. Yeah. Planetary Magic Level 2 is the name of the group. I suggest making the group a favorite group so that it's kind of at the top on your Facebook on the left-hand side. Okay. So really, an ephemeris is the easiest way to do this. So we are really going to start. We're going to start with Pluto transits and then work kind of backwards. We're only going to do the outer planet transits, and then when we move to progressions, we'll be moving to the inner planets because of the way it works. The outer planet transits have the most deep, impactful effect when I do a reading with somebody, I often only talk about outer planet transits. The inner planets are more used for timing. I'm not really that kind, because I talk about soul transformation. I'm not really ever talking about this will happen on a day. So I really rarely talk about the inner planet transits that much. But I want you to be able to learn to look at that if you choose, for yourself and for others necessarily. But really, this is the easiest way to do it. I know at least one of you has solar fire. So I will do a little video to say how you can do a print off of transits for solar fire. But I'm kind of going to give you a little demo on Astro Gold, and then I'm going to talk about how to do it with the use of the ephemeris too. So this is if I can remember to do it. So you can see the screen, right? Can you see what comes up when I click on dynamic listing? Does it show that as well? If not, I'm probably going to have to share my whole screen. No. I wondered if you could, but till you try these things, you don't know. So I'm going to probably share my whole screen. Let me just get that bigger. So that's going to be weird because I'll be sharing myself, but no, I'll pull myself forward. So let me move that out the way. So now you can see the chat box and everything, right? You can see everything. Yeah. I hope. If not, I'm going to have to do videos for this. Yes, cool. So these are dynamic listings in software, and most good astrological software will have dynamic listings. So whether you use it now or not, then you may need to use it. I'm going to show you. But that's what they're called in the software, what you're looking for to create listings of transits. Okay. It's a list of transits. Now, the trouble with most, and this is why I think an ephemeris might be easier for you, but we can look at this. So we'll get let me close that for a second and get my chart up. Oh, my husband's asking if I'm doing okay because I'm stressed today. So all this Sun Mercury square Neptune that we have today, I look calm. I know I'm good at looking calm. But I have 2 more chapters to write by the end of today for this book. And this Neptune transits are making me like, I'm just like overwhelmed. I just want to go to sleep, but I'll get through it. I always do. I might not get them done by the end of the day, in which case the editor won't be pleased. But anyway, so my chart, okay. And I'm just going to do... I'm going to look transits, outer planets for... but don't worry, I'm finishing the chapters by Monday, so this class will continue, and I'll be doing edits and stuff. I'll still have a lot to do, but this is really boring. It's like sludging through mud, actually. So anyway, so I'm going to look at my outer planet transits for 2 years. Okay, transits of outer planets, and I will do a video for how to do that. Sure. Loved you too. I might actually be asking for volunteers to read a PDF copy and do a review on Amazon. So maybe I'll be asking. Cool, awesome. So that's 2 of you, yeah. You'd have to make sure you get it read and get the review up ready for launch. Cool. Okay. So you see what I've done here? I've done transits of outer planets for 2 years, starting January the 1st, 1997. Okay. And this gives you the dates where they enter. In other words, when the transits start by orb, when they leave, and when they're exact. All right. And now, unfortunately, I forgot how to figure out taking off the minor transits. So this is why I think an ephemeris would be good for you. But I just want you to know that you can do this when you progress, or if you progress to having really good software. Now, Jenna, you use time passages. Do you use it as on the app? Yeah. The app gives you the dates, okay, and it gives you kind of the dates. So it gives you the exact dates and things as well. So you can do that. You can look back. You could go back and put, say, but you can only put one date in. You can't put a period with time passages. This is where there are a lot of, unless you've got good astrology software, there are limitations really with what you can do. I'm just kind of looking. No, I can't change that. Can I change? No. I can't change the planets that I've put in there. But this is what you're looking for when you have good good software. And I chose January the 1997 because I'm trying to show you my Pluto transits. I practiced this and I can't find it again. Oh, there we go. I've got the thing. So I'm going to look for Pluto down in the left-hand side over there. Okay, and there's Pluto. And if you see, I happened to pick 1997 because I know I had my Pluto square. So we can see that it entered orb. Pluto was transiting my 11th house, squaring my 8th house Pluto. The transit began at the end of January in 1997. I usually use 3 before and 2 after. I'm a little bit kind of, not, you know me, I'm kind of go by what it feels like, but that's what I was taught. 3 before and 2 after. I use your intuition a little bit with that. For example, I had Pluto transiting all my Sagittarius planets over a period of time, and they're all 7 degrees apart. But with Pluto's direct motion and its retrograde motion, pretty much I was having Pluto transiting all my planets continually for quite a long period when it was transiting all my Sagittarius planets. I was feeling it all the time, obviously more intense. For the real intense periods, I would use 3 before and 2 after, 2 for separating. And again, that's 3 before when it's going retrograde as well, and 2 for separating. Okay, so you can see it started in January. So you would print this off, okay, if you've got the software that does a dynamic listing, and SolarFire does. You'll print this off and go through and highlight the transits you're looking for. And I do want you to do this. I'm going to show you how to do it on the ephemeris too. If you don't have any software or an ephemeris yet, post in the group And I'm going to be really kind, and I'm going to print off dynamic listings for each one of you through Solar Fire, so that we can just see just Pluto transits for you and just Uranus transits, etc. But I do want you to learn how to do it yourself. I don't want to spoon feed everything, because then you don't learn how to do it, okay? So I'm going to go down. I wish I could have just isolated Pluto, but because I usually use Solar Fire for this. So Pluto, we can see stationed retrograde here. So we know Pluto's heading back to square, make his second square. And Pluto transits usually do occur 3 times because of his motion, because he's very slow. Saturn is probably the fastest. Well, Solar Fire is probably one of the best, but it's quite expensive. So if you're prepared to do the outlay, if you know you're going to use it, it's like $340 or something. It's quite expensive. Astro Gold is only Max Soft, and Solar Fire is only PC. So there's that difficulty as well. Astro Gold is improving all the time. If you have a Mac, I would just go with Astro Gold to start with. But for now, if you're not ready for that kind of financial outlay, Ephemeris. And I will talk about that too. Okay. Solar Fire is PC only. I have a PC laptop just for my Solar Fire. There is a way you can use it on a Mac, but I've never done it. So you're welcome. So it depends on your So I've somehow missed the exact of Pluto whilst talking, but that's okay. So we go down, there's Pluto again. So Pluto square left orb. In fact, maybe there wasn't an exact pass for the start of it. Sometimes it goes close, goes away, comes back. And then we keep going through the year looking for Pluto. I don't want to bore you with this, but I will give you an example. So Pluto station direct again. I saw that happen there. And I'm looking for the first exact of my Pluto square to show you. And I'm going to talk about the ephemeris. Then I'm going to talk about the energy of the Pluto square. So there was my first exact. Pluto square Pluto, November the 19th, 1997. So transiting Pluto was transiting my 11th house, and on November the 19th, 1997, it exactly squared my natal Pluto that's in the 8th house. Does that make sense? So that's kind of what I'm looking for. Not to say that anything would happen exactly on that date. Now, I do want to show you how you can look at it in the ephemeris before I go on to talk about that Pluto square, because the Pluto square, and I will talk about other Pluto transits, but this Pluto square is one of the most important transits we have in our life. It doesn't happen exactly at the same time for everybody, because Pluto doesn't have a regular orbit. It has an elliptical orbit, so sometimes it's moving faster and sometimes it's moving slower. So people will have their Pluto square at different ages. If you come to practice astrology for other people, you will find that often people come for readings when they're going through a major transit, like their Pluto square, or like the Uranus opposition, which we'll look at next time. You usually go in and you look and you go, aha, There's all this kind of major stuff going on, which is why the Pluto transits are the outer planet transits really are the ones we want to look at in depth for transits. A transit of the moon affects you, sure, gone in an instant almost. Transit of the sun lasts a day, transit of Jupiter lasts a little bit longer. It probably has some effect, but it doesn't have the lasting impact that an outer planet transit has. Does that make sense? Any questions at that point? Yeah, cool. So you can see as well there, I had another exact Pluto transit because... Sure, yes you can. Yes, you can turn on the microphone. Seeing as there's only two of you. If there was too many people, I would say no. I could probably unmute you, actually.
Yeah, I don't need to talk. It's just I have trouble. This texting bothers me, so thank you.
Oh, sorry. Did you have any questions now? Or
no?
No. Okay. I've realised my volume was a bit low too, so I've turned it up. So I'm glad you did turn your microphone on. So I will, for the start, and probably for most of the outer ones, I will do a printout for you. But I really don't want you to get used to me doing it for you. I want you to get used to looking for transits. And in this class, we're going to do it by looking retrospectively at your own personal outer planet transits. And I want you to look at the dates when they went to within 3 degrees of orb, and then the dates they were exact, and the dates they went 2 degrees after, and look during that time at what happened. Now, as I said, the cheapest way to do it is an ephemeris. Now, if you haven't seen an ephemeris, it has the dates going down this side here. And you will probably, unfortunately for us all, unless you can find one, you might find one that covers both. You might need the 20th and 21st century. Most of us were born, I think all of us, because we're in 2018, were born in the 20th century. And so to look at retrospectively, you will need the 20th century one to look at your past transits. So each page has and that's each page separately, has the date down the left-hand side. It gives the declination and everything, but ignore that. But so it has the date, it has the planets across the top, with Pluto right over here on the outside. Now, Pluto has 2 symbols. You do know that all, right? Both of you? All of you? It has the Pluto that I've been showing on my screen that's kind of like Venus with a cup under the ball. And it also has the P symbol with a line at the bottom. So this ephemeris has, if you can see it, probably not. So you'll need to look for the 2 Pluto symbols. It will be different. And then you can look for the date when Pluto was squaring your own Pluto. We're going to start with the Pluto square. I want you really to find a way to look for that, because that's the easiest. You can also look. Are you okay? It's an echo, Barbara. So while I talk, I'm just going to mute you. Then I'll unmute to ask if there's any questions. Okay.
Oh, I just got up to get a writing pad. I didn't know I'd made any noise. Oh, sorry.
It's okay. And so you can look at the degrees, and you can look at the 11th. So you can easily look at any for that you can use a combination of astro.com if you use free, or if you've, oh, Jenna's gone. If you look at time passages, if you've got that, or whatever you've got to look at, you can look around the date to give you some idea of where Pluto would have been transiting when you were on your Pluto square. And oh, she's back. And then you can find where Pluto would have been transiting that house. And then you can work out the square to the degree, if that makes sense, I hope. And I hope with a combination of me providing printouts, at least initially, and you, I'd like you to look at the printout and then go back and see if you can see it on your own chart so that you can learn to figure out when and where these Pluto transits happened and the other outer planet transits. So I hope that makes sense. So if anybody confused by anything I've said and any of this, ask in the group. That's to people who are not here. Barbara, do you have any questions at this point?
No questions, thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so I'm just going to mute you again for a second. And I'm just going to talk about the energy of Pluto transits. And I'm going to talk about mainly the Pluto square. It's going to be impossible for me to talk about every single transit of every single outer planet on this. So you have to get used to the energy of what a Pluto transit does, okay, and what a Uranus planet transit does, and then combine it with the energy of the planet that it's transiting, and also the house that it's transiting, okay. And I will put those the lists of what each house area of life covers back into the group, because not all of you did level 1. Most of you did, so most of you should have that, but I'll put them in again anyway in case you want to download them, just for a simple reference sheet, so you can say if Pluto's entering the 3rd house, say you may have major transformation and change with siblings or your voice and communications. You get the idea. Okay. Now, Pluto transits, though. Pluto transits are the kind of longest lasting of the main outer planet, and yes, I count him as a planet. Transits because he's the slowest moving. He takes 248 years to go. Sure, yeah, I mean, Pluto transiting any planet or opposing it is important, but because there's so many, I can't go through every one. Do you get what I mean? So we're going to look mainly at the Pluto square Pluto, and oh, I see what you mean. Okay, yeah, okay, yeah, I can do that. Yeah. No, Pluto transits everyone. I will say, and I'll say it now actually, and I can post it as well later. Pluto conjunctions, Pluto squares, and Pluto oppositions are the most challenging, I will say. Then, in that order, probably. I think the square is actually the most challenging. Then the opposition, then a conjunction. Yeah, that's major transformation. Okay. But because we look at so many things in the chart, I will not be able to just spoon feed you what Pluto conjunct the sun means, and then Pluto square the sun, and then Pluto opposition to the sun. Cookbooks, exactly. So this is why I want you to look back at your own transits, and we'll discuss them and the energy of them, and you can see what happened in your life when you had these transits, and then you will remember it because it happened to you. Does that matter? Does that make sense? I mean, I realized the transit of how powerful the Pluto square was by looking at my own. So anyway,
I have a quick question, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Would I ever have experienced this Pluto sitting on top of Chiron prior to this time?
No,
right?
No.
So that's a once a life. Okay.
Most Pluto transits are once in a lifetime. In fact, I'd say all, because Pluto takes 248 years to get round the zodiac.
Right. Okay, thank you. I'll mute myself. Thank you.
Okay. The USA is about to have its Pluto return. Countries have Pluto, which means Pluto will be going back to where it was when on the Declaration of Independence. And that's why this country is in such a mess and turmoil at the moment. Because Pluto, to talk about the energy of a Pluto transits bring transformation at the deepest level. And they can be very, very painful. The areas of life touched by Pluto, by planet and house placing, are going to see some very profound changes on both the inner and outer sphere during a Pluto transit. You know, some people are more of an affinity to Pluto, I find them slightly less painful. People who really have, say, no Pluto Scorpio 8th house affinity in their chart, or have very little water, say, can find them excruciating. All right, Pluto transits are relentless. Okay. I'm kind of an expert on Pluto transits because, let's go back to just my chart for a second, and I will just show you quickly. I don't want to make this all about me, but you know, you can see my chart. Pluto was in my 8th house here in Virgo when I was born. So Pluto has traveled. It was fairly easy on me at first. It has traveled over my Venus, Neptune. I'll ignore my Mercury, my Mars, my Jupiter, my Sun, my Ascendant, and my Saturn. And it has also opposed my Moon in my lifetime. So I've had nearly every Pluto conjunction that you can have, plus my Pluto opposite my Moon. So that's just to talk about the energy of it. Okay, yeah. So I'm well acquainted with Pluto transits. But luckily, because I have an 8th house Pluto and Scorpio midheaven, I'm not afraid to face up to these things. So, but just talking of some examples, okay. Transiting Pluto, say conjunct a Venus, can bring major shifts in relationships, okay, and marriage. It can bring dissolution of it, or it can bring a new one, because it's always about death and rebirth. It's about Pluto excavates what you no longer need. I love the phrase for Pluto, which is really a special for Pluto transits, that Pluto takes away what you thought was your power and leaves you with what is truly your power. So Pluto it's like the Tower card in the tarot. He destroys what is not working and then reconstructs. Usually in a better way. So, but the lessons that transiting Pluto, by any transit really, but more especially the challenging aspects, to go to your point, Jenna, the conjunction, the square, the opposition, are about self-control, power, and control. In relation, if it was a Venus one, it's how to get what you want without resorting to manipulation. Pluto seeks to kind of let go of anything that doesn't work. Say if it was Pluto transiting your natal Neptune, it's about letting go of escapist tendencies. That's interesting. I don't remember looking at my Pluto crossing my Neptune, which is by my midheaven. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's when I gave up drinking and drugging, which I did in my young days. Party drugging. I was never an addict, but you know, I had a lot of fun. But even so, I stopped I was compelled to stop, and Pluto does that. He compels you to change. says you've not got any choice in the matter, okay, but to transform. So really, it's best to work with Pluto transits, and if you're working with other people, to guide them to work with Pluto transits rather than resist them, because there is no resisting Pluto, really. He removes parts of you that no longer serve you, thought patterns, behavior, emotional patterns, to be destroyed. And then it's a bit like the phoenix, which is one of the symbols of Scorpio that Pluto rules. You kind of are reborn from the ashes in a brighter, shinier way, really. So transiting Pluto is a real deep teacher. And that's why I want you to really look at your own Pluto transits. I would start by looking at your Pluto square, okay, and then move on to look at if he's transited any other planets. And the reason is that the Pluto square is really massive. We all, well, as long as we live to, whenever your Pluto square is. Mine was at age 37. As I said, it's at different ages because of the orbit. It will be a time of great change. And if I tell you that year that I showed you, 1997, Pluto, I had 3 passes. My Pluto square started at the end of January 1997. That's when my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Okay. Because of that diagnosis, my then boyfriend, live-in lover, and I decided to, no, you probably haven't yet, Jenna. And I'm not saying somebody will die every time, but this is the power of it. The transit moves counterclockwise around the wheel. All planets move counterclockwise. Okay. So, yeah, at the end of January, when the Pluto transit really started for me, my dad was diagnosed with this terminal brain cancer. Within 6 weeks, we decided to get married, and we decided I would come off the pill. So I was actually 6 weeks pregnant. So we decided then to get married because he'd had this diagnosis. I was the only daughter. Within 6 weeks, we got married, and the week before we got married, I found out I was pregnant because I got pregnant right away. By the time the transit became exact in November and was really in orb, my dad died on October the 1st, 1997. My daughter was born on November the 2nd, 1997. So I had death, birth, and marriage all in 1 year on my Pluto square. Yeah, it was enormous. And of course, there was all the internal stuff that went on with that, of death and rebirth, of me having to kind of step into this kind of my own power without my dad to look after me anymore, because I was a daddy's girl because I was the only daughter. And it transformed my whole life. It was like, and looking back, these things happen. So nobody get all pitiful for me, but this is the power of a Pluto transit. And looking back, I also did kind of face most of it head on. I was kind of the one in the family that really faced up to my dad's death. I went with him to the doctors when he got the diagnosis from his biopsy. And my dad did not want to face up to it. So I spoke to the doctor alone to get a time scale. I was the one that knew he wouldn't be alive by the end of the year. Nobody else would talk about it. You know, I kind of faced up to all this kind of energy and dealt with becoming a mum and a wife at the same time. So it was huge. So this is kind of why I want you to really look at your own transits. Now, when you're doing a reading or when you're looking forward to your own transits, don't predict birth, marriage, and death, because, you know, it could happen, all happen very differently. Remember, I have a Pluto in 8th house Pluto, which is death and rebirth in itself. Okay, and my dad was Scorpio, so yeah, exactly. But my dad was Scorpio too, so you know there's all these other factors that, and I would never predict a death when doing a reading or looking at your own chart. But Pluto squares and Pluto transits have that kind of power. We see the Pluto return coming in the US chart, and it's intense. You know, our institutions are dying and the dirt is being drug up from the surface here in the US. That's why I've always said that Trump is kind of our shadow in our face. It doesn't, you know, I'm not one of these people who goes, oh my God, oh, because I just see it as the astrology, and you know, it's kind of been brought up in our face. He kind of is kind of a caricature almost of what we've not wanted to look at, what's been hidden, smoothed over in that white picket fence in the USA by all our silly kind of ideas and things. He's kind of throwing it all on its head and says whatever he thinks. So this is neither for him or against him. That's just a fact. Yeah, we did need to have the veil pulled back. So I see him just as, you know, kind of the representation of Pluto. Okay. Pluto transits are often less traumatic when you have a well-lived Pluto. That's what Stephen Forrest said, who kind of taught my teacher. If you get to know your Pluto placement in your chart well and are not afraid to face those areas of power and powerlessness, you might find it easier. But a Pluto square is when your beliefs are questioned, when things you've taken up for granted come up for examination. So where you're looking for real meaning in life. To go back to my Pluto square, my Pluto was transiting my 11th house of organizations, companies, that kind of thing. And I remember going through all that. I worked selling computers back then and things, and my work just felt meaningless. I couldn't do it anymore. And that's because Pluto is seeking deep meaning. And that kind of started me on the path to where I am now, work-wise. Astrology had been a hobby before, but what else did I want to say about Pluto? So, of course, you know, you look at the outer events that can happen during a Pluto transit, like real physical death and rebirth, and it's what you take from it, the lessons, how it changes your meaning in life, really. And basically, with the Pluto square, your life is going to be transformed, and that means inside and often outside. Sometimes the change comes from within, sometimes outer events push it along a little bit as well. But mine was extreme. It's just the way it is. Okay with that. Okay. So I'm kind of one of the more extreme examples of Pluto square. But you're probably not going to like it very much always. You know, To quote Stephen Forrest again, because he's got a good turn of phrase for some things like this, he said he sees the Pluto square activating when you find yourself face down in the carpet, weeping, "Why me?" And when you hold on to what's not been working, it makes it more resistant, and then that's where you're going, like, why me, pour me a drink, and Pluto says, well, you're going to do this anyway, kind of thing. So yeah, most Pluto squares and most Pluto transits actually activate 3 times, sometimes even more, sometimes 5 times. So look at that, means they are exactly conjunct the whatever they're transiting. So we'll start with the Pluto square and look at others too. And really, that's to kind of Pluto, that kind of really symbolizes Pluto's relentlessness. The first time you kind of feel it and you kind of go, no, I'm not ready to change, quite often. The second time you realize that you're going to have to, like, step into your power and really face this kind of thing. Nobody's going to come and fix it. You've got to do it. By the third pass or even more, you're getting kind of used to this energy. You're beginning to accept it and know that things are going to have to change, whether it's just your thought patterns, your emotions, or whether it's outer things also. And you are, I think that, everybody goes, oh my God, is it ever going to end? But I think Pluto goes back and forth to give you the opportunity to get used to this energy of this, you are going to change and you are going to be reborn. And by the time, you're on the third pass or more, you're going, all right, okay, I get it. This is how I'm going to choose to make my life more meaningful and change these lifelong patterns and be reborn in some aspect. Pluto going over my ascendant was another one. That's another powerful one. And, you may not get that depending on the makeup of your chart, but just to give you another example, and it's because it's one of my more recent ones. Pluto going over the ascendant, I could look at the dates, but I know it coincided with my being moved here to the USA, and going through such inner turmoil because I didn't want to be here, because I wanted to stay in Australia, and I had just made this life in Australia, and all my power felt taken away from me. And of course, this is my ascendant, so this is how I am, kind of thing, because I was described as the trailing spouse by the US government, and I had to deal with being in a place I didn't really want to live, which I've got used to now. And I had to face up to it and realize that the only thing I could change was me, because I was here. And the only thing I could change was how I faced up to it and how I chose to step into my personal power and decide to get on with it, if you like. It's kind of got the energy sometimes, in some respects, of pull up your big girl panties, Pluto transits. And, this was not an overnight thing again. I did a lot of this face down in the carpet, weeping, why me thing for that one as well. But then once I realized that I could change it and that nobody was going to fix it, the feeling was very liberating. So Pluto transits can be very liberating. And I would invite you to really to think of that word when you're working with clients, but also have empathy for the pain they may be feeling. And when you're facing up for yourself, then you know that it can be liberating because you have the knowledge of astrology, which is wonderful. And you will know that if you just really kind of face up to it and change what needs to be changes, you will be a bit like the phoenix rising up from the ashes, okay, and be reborn and in better, stronger, more powerful, more empowered, all those words, okay. So for this week, I don't really want to say much more about it. I won't have time today to do print-offs for everybody. So I would invite you to ask questions now and to start figuring out how you are going to look at when your transits were. So I actually don't want to rush to give you the printouts because I do want you to do a bit of exploring for yourself. So look for your Pluto square. Mine was age 37. So you can kind of start there and you can look back if it's gone past the square. You've had a square to your Mars. Yeah, you can talk about that. Yeah, do look at the dates for that as well, Jenna. But start, because you haven't had the Pluto square. Yeah, start. That's a good one to start with. Yeah, I have Pluto square Mars natally, so.
Oh, Louise?
Yes.
I have my Pluto in the first house, and then I have Neptune conjunct Saturn in my fourth house. That's going to be my first square that I look at, I would assume, right?
Well, you will have a look at where Pluto was and what dates it was at when it was squaring your natal Pluto. Does that make sense?
So we're looking for Pluto square our natal Pluto?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
So what degree is your Pluto at? I cannot remember.
It's at 20 degrees in the first house of Leo.
Of Leo, yeah.
Sir, or whatever.
So you will be looking at when Pluto was at around 20 degrees Scorpio.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You look at it there to see when it was, and look for exact dates and look for the 3 degrees before. So when it was 17 degrees of Scorpio, when it was exact, and when it went to 22 degrees of Scorpio. But I want you to kind of look back and forth so you can see how many times it was exact as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome. So yes, so this class, really, to get the most out of it, you are going to do a bit of work for yourselves. Because it's the best way to understand these aspects. You know, I could just give you a cookbook. I could read some stuff out to you that I've written, you know, but you will really understand these transits from looking back and looking at your own life. I will be giving examples, of course, not always my chart, but my chart is sometimes easier because I know exactly what happened back then when these aspects happened, which is why I want you to look at yours too, so you can look back at your aspects and know what happened. Exactly. It's what brought me to it. And, you know, I ended up doing it for other people. But I think we learn from our own experience. And then we can just use that to understand ourselves better, or we can take it out and help other people with it too. Neither is better than the other, I think. So I didn't expect this call to be really long. What I want everybody to do who's listening is figure out how you are going to find your own Pluto square or an important transit like Jenna's, like Pluto square Mars, or a conjunction. But squares are often the more kind of crazy ones. And look at the dates. Think back, think what happened then, take some notes, be prepared to come and share. If you can't come live to the calls, I would love it if you would write in the group, because I think everybody can learn from everybody else's experience. and go, oh, but I also want you to focus not just on the outer events, okay, that happened at that time, but how it changed you internally. Okay. And I would like you to seriously consider how you are going to find these transits going forward without me doing it for you. Whether you're going to buy an ephemeris, whether you're going to work out how to do it on astro.com, I don't care. So long as you figure out a way to do it that works for you. Okay. Makes sense. So I'm going to go and have some lunch. I'm going to get this recording up as soon as I can. We'll meet at this same link every week at the same time. Yeah, I have time passages too. It just takes more jiggling around than printing a list. So, but if you can start, I think time passages can work quite easily, and that's an inexpensive app for people that want to do it. I think when I bought it, it was about $40, I think. There you go. Cool. Yeah. But everybody has to figure out their own way because there's so many different kinds of astrology, and it depends which kind of phone you've got or which kind of computer you've got. But I will say though, if any of you really want to continue doing astrology in any seriousness, you should have one of these. Okay. There's also an app called iEphemeris, but this kind of... I use Porphyry for transits, yes. So that would be interesting, Jenna. I wonder if we do that for you, actually, to see when Pluto transits into a new house, whether whole sign or Porphyry was more accurate. That would be an interesting little exercise. I found Porphyry accurate for me, so we'll see. All righty. So I will thank you for being here, two of you. It's nice to have some interaction. Then I know what's hitting and resonating and what isn't. I hope all of you others, I love you too, Barbara, and I love you too, Jenna. And I've got 2 people who want to do review copies for my book, hopefully. So yay. I've got 3 people now. So yay. I will see you later. I've got to go and finish those damn chapters in this book. I'm loving it really, but it's becoming a little bit of a slog just at this point. I've got quite a bit to do by Monday. So I'll get the recording up, but you may not see much more of me before Tuesday morning. So thank you. Bye.